Today we are going to look at the penultimate pattern, pattern 6. That's a vocabulary word, or at least it should be. Let's see if we can figure out the formula for pattern 6 based on these 3 sentences. Our first step is always to locate the verb. Next, find the subject, Mateo. Now we see if we have a direct object. Our direct object question is always what? Mateo wrote what? And our answer is a letter. So that means our verb is transitive. But we have another noun in between the verb and the DO. We can't ignore nouns. They're too important. In this sentence, we have 3 of them. So we must figure out how each one functions. Having found the DO, we now ask the indirect object question, to whom? The answer, AOC, gives us an indirect object. This pattern 6 sentence uses 3 of our 7 noun functions: subject, direct object, and indirect object. Can you name the other 2 we have covered? Of course, you remembered they were subject complement, which appears in patterns 2 and 3, and objects of the preposition, which sometimes appear in pattern 1. Back to our sentences. Let's see how this one is also pattern 6. We start with the verb, then the subject. Then we look for the direct object by asking the question, what? Ella offered what? Assistance. Because we see a noun in the middle of our pattern, we can assume it's an indirect object, but let's test to make sure. We need to ask the question, to whom? Ella offered assistance to whom? Robert. And here's our last sentence. Molly fed what? A treat. To whom? The dog. So also pattern 6. And thus we have pattern 6, subject plus action verb transitive plus indirect object plus direct object. Not every verb can create an indirect object. Because the question we ask is to whom, you could guess that we need verbs that deal with doing things between people. These are not verbs that you need to memorize, but it is good to be aware that these are the sorts of verbs that might give you indirect objects. So let's go with a concept check. Can you tell which of these is pattern 6? Pause the video until you have the answer. Hopefully you picked sentence 3. Let's test it out. Circle the verb, underline the subject, determine the verb type, and we do this by asking the questions. So Luke gave what, which gives us grief. Luke gave grief. We see a noun in between. Luke gave grief to whom? His mom. Now we highlight all those parts that are in our pattern. Well, that's it for today. I can't wait until next time when I can introduce you to the final pattern, the final way a clause can be written.